Is it the beginning of the end for Dilma Rousseff? The lower house of Congress overwhelmingly voted to impeach the Brazilian president overnight. And this is what the House of Deputies looked like when they reached the two-thirds majority in favor of impeachment. The final decision will go to the Senate, but it's hard to see this ending positively for the Brazilian president. The country hasn't been this divided in decades. Let's take a look at what Brasilia looked like during the vote on Sunday. Anti-Rousseffs on one side, pro-Rousseffs on the other. So my question today, is a coup d'etat underway in Brazil? My guests answering that question, Marcia Bechara, a Brazilian journalist and international correspondent for several media outlets, including Opera Mundi, a left-leaning newspaper. You are pro-Rousseff, and you're going to tell us why in just a moment.
Yes.
Andre Neto, you work for a weekly Brazilian paper, a daily Brazilian newspaper, conservative paper, O Estado de São Paulo. The paper has called for the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff. However, you have a more nuanced opinion. You'll explain to us in a moment. And this evening, you're speaking in your name only, not in the name of the newspaper. Stefan Witkowski is also with us, a political analyst, a member of the Institute of Latin America Studies. Alfredo Valadao with us as well, professor at Sciences Po, expert on Brazilian politics, amongst other things, it has to be said. All right, thank you all for being with us. We're also joined this evening by Richard Thomset, who's with us live from Brazil, and of course has been covering this story for France 24. Richard, I'd just like to ask you this evening, before we get into the arguments and the thick of the debate, what the mood is like in the country right now.
Well, Cyril, after that tumultuous vote in the lower house on Sunday, I think everyone's a little bit hungover today, including myself. But I think Dilma Rousseff put it well herself the other day when she said that Brazil is living in strange times, and that's certainly how it feels. It's like we're entering unknown territory. What could be a long period of political instability in a year that Brazil is supposed to be showcasing itself to the world. I mean, the Olympic Games are due to start here in Rio de Janeiro in just 4 months' time, and if the Senate decides to take the impeachment process forward, we're looking at the possibility that when that opening ceremony begins, Brazil won't have an elected president in office. So not the image the country wanted to project to the world at all. I mean, judging by the scenes in Brazil's lower house on Sunday, you might think the mood is euphoric, but the Brazilian people right now don't have much to be euphoric about. I mean, the economy is frankly a bit of a basket case. It's in its second year of recession, in desperate need of reform. Prices are rising, and confidence is low. And I mean, people are mainly preoccupied with just getting by. I mean, in my limited experience, many of the conversations I have with people in the street seem to be complaining about the rising cost of living, and many blame Dilma Rousseff, which is why this whole process feels more like an indictment of her performance as a leader, rather than for the accusations she's actually facing, that she unlawfully used money from state banks to mask the extent of the budget deficit.
All right, Richard Thomset reporting live from Rio de Janeiro, also reminding our viewers, indeed, of why Dilma Rousseff is being impeached, at least officially on the face of it. She's being accused of doctoring public finances in an election year to make them look healthier than they actually were. Marcia Bechara, two-thirds of Brazilian lawmakers in the lower house of Congress voted yesterday for the impeachment procedure. Do you feel this is democracy at work in your country?
Of course, it's kind of democracy. They are voting, there is a majority. But I was reading The Guardian today's article about Brazilian political crisis. I have something to share with you, if I may. Well, first of all, let's take a closer look about which reasons they have presented to vote yes for this destitution. They say things like, for the people of Jerusalem.
This is what was being said in Congress?
Yes,
these are arguments put forward by lawmakers yesterday.
Yes, I'm quoting congressmen in Brazil. In the name of God, for my family and my daughters, and sending a kiss to the eldest one, Marilda. For the fundaments of the Christianity, for the quadrangular family, for the end of the sex at the school, for my grandchildren, Pedro and Felipe, and, most important of all, for the memory of Brilhante Ustra, the most important and official main torturer of Dilma Rousseff. This was said by Jair Bolsonaro, and now I'm
These were all various lawmakers invoking these reasons?
Congressmen, at the moment, they are saying yes. When they are commemorating this, they said why they were
So they want to
voting.
impeach Dilma Rousseff in the name of God, in the name of Jerusalem, in the name of their family,
of
in
the
the name of Dilma
quadrangular
Rousseff's
family.
former torturer?
Yes, and now I'm quoting The Guardian. On a dark night, arguably the lowest point was when Jair Bolsonaro, the far-right deputy from Rio de Janeiro, dedicated his yes vote to Carlos Brilhante Ustra, the colonel who headed the boycott torture unit within dictatorship era. Dilma Rousseff was a former guerrilla, was among these tortured people. This is not, my friends, about mismanagement of economics. This has never been about economics. I don't believe it.
It's about politics.
Of course. More than this, it's about misogyny, it's about lots of things.
Stefan Witkowski?
No, I share this opinion. When we see that from France, the impression was dramatic. Saying what kind of democracy, the impression we had about that vote, it's incredible. Arguments were really, we never saw that, it gives the impression that a little bit like the French political system, the Fourth Republic. At the end of the Fourth Republic, it's the impression that it's the end of a system, political system, institutional system, political system. It's really very strange, from the arguments.
And
there are no legal bases clearly established, as the Attorney General mentioned it. First point.
Exactly.
What was
Second
invoked
point,
was the
it's
rule
a
of fiscal responsibility.
It's a political process, but it's not a judicial process. And the argument about...
They're following the Constitution. The Constitution provides for this possibility.
Yes, but it's not completely established on that point. And the reality is completely different. The problem is the Constitution, Brazilian Constitution since 1988. And the problem is the political system with the systems of party, with corruption, and all the parties, including the party, the working rulers,
We'll get to the other lawmakers. Are you saying this is a coup d'etat?
Well, a coup d'etat institutional, maybe. I don't know. But probably it's not a legal procedure.
There's no crime
It's a
proven.
real problem for Brazilian democracy.
As you speak, I'm seeing Marcia.
It's very different from the impeachment in 1992 against Fernando Collor.
Right, because it's the second time in history, it has to be said, that lawmakers start an impeachment procedure. The previous president resigned before it could go through.
But it's completely different process, completely different. We can't compare the two processes. We can maybe compare this with the coup of 1964.
So you are putting it in the same category as a coup d'etat then? Institutional coup d'etat, I understand what you're saying.
Let's probably, it's maybe a little bit too difficult to ensure that completely, but it will be important if after the Senate vote, and if really Temer becomes president.
Vice President Michel Temer. We'll get to him in the second part of the debate. Okay. I mean, he's definitely important to talk about.
But it will be very important to know exactly what kind of decision he will take in economic matters.
And we will get to that, absolutely. That's a promise. André Neto, correspondent for O Estado de São Paulo. Your take on this. I see that Marcia, I see Marcia is emotional about this.
A little bit, I can say, and even if I'm not a partisan of Parti des Travailleurs,
the Labour Party of Dilma Rousseff.
I have lots of critics about Dilma Rousseff. But yes, I'm quite emotional. I'm Brazilian. I was there last night. I was hearing all of this hell.
Andre, do you feel that your country is taking a step backwards?
Yes, definitely yes. I wrote this on Facebook today. It's my particular opinion. I'd like to stress this. It's a different opinion concerning my newspaper,
Sure.
for instance. My newspaper called for impeachment weeks ago. But I have a different opinion. Actually, first of all, I think there is no room for doubt that President Dilma Rousseff and the Labour parties, the Workers' Party, are fully responsible or almost fully responsible for this political crisis.
They brought this upon themselves?
Yeah. They are very unable politically in order to negotiate the coalition. And even the fact of negotiating too much sometimes.
She was a good enough politician to get re-elected. We have to remind our viewers, this is her second term. She's in the middle of her second term, won re-election in 2014.
And for understand why, we have to come back to the main subject of this crisis that, in my point of view, is economics. During the period that the Brazilian economy was very healthy and the commodities were very expensive in the world scenario, Brazil was growing, and the political problems were, let's say...
You think they took a backseat to the economic success of the country for a number of years?
And we've been forgetting all these years that there is a sort of political system that is failing down in the country for the last 25 years. Since the Brazilian Constitution in '88, we know that there are some breaches in our Constitution that make the Brazilian system very poorly.
Makes it vulnerable.
Fantastic. That's it.
But why? So you say she has been politically. She's not been politically savvy. You say the Labour Party has brought this upon itself, largely due to the very poor state of the economy. And by the way, the Brazilian economy is currently suffering the worst recession in a century. It shrank by 3.8% last year and is expected to do the same thing this year. So bearing that in mind, why are you upset about the impeachment?
I don't think it's a good tool to face this crisis, you know. In my point of view, we had to call for new elections 2 or 3 months ago when this crisis were in the worst point in December.
Who can call for new elections?
We need to negotiate this. You're right, Valadão, when you say we can't.
Yeah, Alfredo's shaking his head. I mean, when's the last time you saw a leader calling for new elections?
We have to propose this to the Congress and to vote for the new elections. But it's as complicated as to vote for an impeachment.
Alfredo?
So why not?
I think I'm the only one who doesn't share what everybody's saying here. For the first thing is, I remember when the PT of Lula went to the streets in the end of the 90s asking for the resignation of Fernando Henrique Cardoso, and that didn't call that a coup.
But they didn't get it. It didn't happen.
They didn't get it. It didn't happen. But I think it's strange to call a coup an opposition that is doing its job. What the job of opposition is to take advantage of the problems of government.
So exploit the political weaknesses.
It didn't come from nothing, this thing. In the last 4 years, we have a huge economic crisis, as my friend here said, with a huge unemployment, inflation, all this.
We're seeing the numbers right there. Economy shrinking by 3.8%, unemployment 7.6%, inflation 6.5%. The currency, by the way, the Brazilian currency losing a quarter of its value last year against the dollar.
No, but more than that, the PT was embroiled in huge corruption scandals since 2005, where you had the Mensalão and you had most of the leadership who was decapitated by justice for that. And now we have one of the worst scandals, corruption scandals, not only of the PT, but it touches other, but the PT really eat a lot from these scandals, with many of the most important CEOs of the country, even in jail. So what I think happened is that the answer of the PT to all this was a very arrogant one. It was to say, everyone who criticizes us is a putschist, is trying to make a coup. So, in fact, right now, I think the straw that broke the camel back was when Dilma nominated Lula,
her predecessor, Luis
Inacio in order that he escaped to be immediately put to
to shield him from prosecution.
And I think that the Brazilian people and everybody, in fact, thought that it was a finger to the country. It wasn't.
I don't share.
She was giving the country
a
finger. But
no,
hold on.
no,
you could take a totally different approach to this, which is that potentially.
And then I think that it's not true that there's no legal basis. The person who the three jurists who did the impeachment demand to Congress are one of the best jurists we have in Brazil. The Supreme Court accepted this and said that you could even put the procedure on.
Okay.
And it's a procedure that has more than 6, 7, 8 months with every legal nicety you can have inside.
So you're saying they followed protocol, they followed the law down to a T. Couldn't you ask the question, in the end, Dilma Rousseff has actually strengthened the rule of law in Brazil, and the proof is that this investigation has actually touched all the circles of power. She let this happen.
Yes, but
so the judicial process, the legal process can take place in Brazil.
Probably yes, but she's saying that it is the opposition who's manipulating justice against them to make a coup d'état. If she would say yes, I did this and now it's there, so okay, I'm happy. Okay, but this is not the case. What they're saying now, in fact, is to say when we have the legitimacy of the vote, we can do whatever we want, and the people who are against that are making a coup d'état. I'm not saying that the guys who are making pro-impeachment are good guys. There are a lot of bad guys, but they were all in her government. They left her government 1 month ago. So I think the problem is not Dilma, it's not the opposition. The problem is that the whole Brazilian political system has melted down.
And more than half of the lawmakers in the Brazilian Congress have been accused for in one form of corruption or another, one scandal or another. We'll talk more about that and who might come after Rousseff and what the country might look like as a plan B for Brazil in the second part of the France 24 debate.